Welcome to the Inside Story. I'm Billy Hallowell, and I'm joined today by Ryan Foley, who is going to take us into Trump's joint address before Congress. Lots of elements to break down. It made a lot of headlines this week, and with good reason. It was history breaking. I think it was an hour and 40 minutes of time. No president had spoken for that long, I believe, in front of a joint session of Congress ever. So it's pretty interesting to see. How you doing today, Ryan?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for coming on. There's a lot to break down here. This wasn't necessarily a State of the Union, but it sort of also was because of the timing of it and Trump sort of coming back into office. So, what was the central theme of Trump's address before Congress?
Well, his theme was America has entered a golden age with him at the helm. A lot of the speech was him talking about what he's done so far, but he also asked Congress to take some more action to continue what he describes as the golden age.
Yeah, it's interesting. Of course, there are different viewpoints on what the golden age is, and lots of people very excited about the president's agenda. Others not so much. And it's a big agenda in that it's a massive shift in the way government operates, in the size and scope of government. Very very different from the president's first term. But when you look at the address, what was the most surprising element of it to you?
Well, the most surprising element of the address, or the evening, was the beginning when Trump was repeatedly shouted down by Representative Al Green, a Democrat from Texas, who's one of Trump's most prominent critics, who called for impeachment 4 months into his first term after the firing of James Comey and is already working to impeach him over his suggestion that Gaza should become part of the United States, or the U.S. should take control of it. Green says that's a form of ethnic cleansing. When House Speaker Mike Johnson asked Green to take his seat as he stood and shouted during the address, Green refused, which prompted Johnson to direct the sergeant at arms to escort him out of the chamber.
I mean, that is, it's remarkable to watch these things. There were times when Obama delivered a State of the Union. I believe it was during a State of the Union. A member of Congress yelled out, "You lie!" We've had these things happen before, but this level of reaction and response and dysfunction um, seems different, and it seems to sort of match the vitriol and chaos that we sort of see in our politics right now, right? That division sort of pouring over into the chamber there. Were you personally surprised to see that the level to which it went?
Yes, I guess I was. I heard there was some talk about Democrats were going to disrupt, so I wasn't sure if any of them would actually do it, but yeah, he was definitely the most animated. Others weren't as animated, but they repeatedly held up signs during the speech with phrases like Musk steals, false, and save Medicaid.
Okay, so this is the other interesting thing. There were lots of responses to the Democrats' response as well, even among other Democrats. What has that reaction been to what went on there in the chamber to the president's speech? The reaction, not just the reaction to his speech, but the reaction to the Democrats' response to it.
Well, the biggest fallout is there's a push to censure Green in the U.S. House of Representatives, and it'll probably pass just because there are more Republicans than Democrats. So it's not really going to expel him from the House, but I guess it's seen as like a permanent stain on his record.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see where that goes. And it was also fascinating to watch Trump's reaction. He was shaking his head as this was going on. But can you tell us a little bit now? The Democrats, they every time a president gives a State of the Union or a similar address like this one, the other party has somebody come out and respond. This is typical; it's customary. Who is Elisa Slotkin? She was the Democrat who responded to Trump's address.
Lisa Slotkin is a first term Democratic senator from Michigan. She's seen as a rising star in the party because she won the Senate race in Michigan as Trump carried the state and repeatedly held down a seat in the U.S. House of Representatives that is considered purple. So I guess the goal was to pick somebody that they think could help them win back the Americans they lost in 2024.
Yeah, yeah, and that will be interesting to see if it's effective, and that will depend much. more on what Trump does and how people react to it probably than anything else in terms of how, this is sort of what happens. There's a volleying back and forth based on policies and what happens. Now, just kind of coming back to the address, what were some of the key issues that Trump spoke about and even doubled down on?
He spoke a lot about illegal immigration and LGBT related issues. He highlighted the issue of trans identified males playing in women's sports by telling the story of Peyton McNabb. She was a high school volleyball player who had to play against a trans identified male, and the male athlete ended up forcefully hitting the ball, which hit her in the face and caused her to experience serious injuries and derailed her athletic career. McNabb was present in the audience, and then he also pointed out how January Littlejohn was in the audience. She was a mother who filed a lawsuit against the school district where her daughter went to school because the school worked to socially transition her daughter behind her back, basically giving her a new name that did not match her birth name or her biological sex. And while they were talking with the parents, they would use her real name, but at school she would be known by her quote unquote nickname. And then the other topic was illegal immigration that he focused on heavily, where he talked about Laken Riley, who was killed by an illegal alien criminal, and then he signed a law named after her that received bipartisan support. Then there was also the murder of 12-year-old Jocelyn Nungare at the hands of what he called illegal alien monsters from Venezuela, and he talked about how he signed an order naming a wildlife refuge in Texas in her honor because she really liked animals. And the mothers of Riley and Nungare were at the address, so Trump pointed them out.
A lot there. I mean, he really tackled a lot and touched upon a lot. And some of these things were things he talked about last time, but the intensity with which he's talking about them is quite different this time. And one thing I want to just point people to is that the Christian Post, you guys are doing some great work, obviously, here. One thing that you're working on is a new weekly listicle series on Trump and his administration. And so I wanted to give you a chance to talk a little bit about that because I think this is a great resource for people to be able to go to each week to find out what exactly is happening in the administration.
Well, myself and other reporters have been working on weekly listicle series highlighting executive orders and other statements or actions taken by Trump and his administration because the volume of changes is so high. The initial goal was to focus primarily on executive orders, but the series has expanded to focus on comments or actions taken by Trump that aren't necessarily executive orders, such as the push to make Gaza part of the United States, his characterization of Zelensky as a dictator, and most recently, the tense exchange between Trump and Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, in the Oval Office.
Well, very good. And people can check that out over at the Christian Post. And obviously, the goal there is to get people up to speed on what is happening and let readers know. And they can go to ChristianPost.com to check that out. Ryan Foley, as always, appreciate your time today.
Thank you for having me.
Everyone else, make sure you head on over to the Christian Post and come back next week for another episode of The Inside Story. We'll see you then.